I'll give the floor to you, Ed.
Thank you, Todd. Excuse me. Welcome. I've been asked to participate in this environmental forum from a business or a corporate perspective. Not necessarily from a tourism business point of view, but a more global set of metrics. I'll not give you the economy is the environment and the environment is the economy speech. I'm sure everyone here has heard it and understand its message. They are irrefutably linked. I assume that I am asked to provide this business perspective not based on my involvement with environmental organizations, but my association with Donald Trump and the Trump organization.
I didn't say that on the radio press.
Thank you. I served for over 12 years and continue to serve as Donald Trump's only environmental consultant. The relationship has allowed me to be exposed to the inner circle and the thinking of developers and promoters, and has provided me with a unique knowledge of the bare-fisted, aggressive approach of the business of land use. But business is the key. The essential nature of business is to respond to, or more accurately, prey upon the fundamentals of human nature. If you're cold, we'll sell you a blanket. If you're hot, we'll sell you some iced tea. Recognizing that these are just metaphors for other parts or needs of the human condition, or needs that people can be convinced that they have. You'll be able to surround yourself with much nicer, at least much better looking friends if you only use a particular perfume. Or the only way to achieve true happiness is to watch TV wearing pink Snuggies. Satisfying a need, or creating a need that needs to be satisfied, is what it's all about. The goal is to modify human behavior to achieve your objective. There are several examples of successful behavior modification campaigns that are germane to tonight's forum. Again, these are the things that happened successfully in our country over the last 10 or 20 years, and I never dreamed that they'd be successful. Banning smoking, mothers against drunk driving, picking up dog poop, and wearing seatbelts, all of which have been very successful marketing strategies, none of which I thought were possible at the time. Drinking while driving, when I got my license, was not illegal. It was a rite of passage. It was part of your life. Picking up after your dogs, really? Yeah. It's amazing that our culture went from having your dog poop anywhere. And I see some older people in the audience. I can remember the day when they had these signs in residential neighborhoods that said, curb your dog. And since I was a family member and had to walk my dog, what did curb your dog mean anyway? And then go from that never really was successful, to these people that started talking about picking up after your dog. I thought was just silly. Stopping people from smoking on planes. Why would anybody even fly if you couldn't smoke? In those days, everybody smoked. And there was a price to be attached to each. Seatbelts increased the sales price of cars. The less people who bought cigarettes reduced the collection of taxes. Tobacco is taxed very high. Less people who smoke, the less taxes are going to be brought in, the more we all have to pay. The point is that we shouldn't be discouraged if environmental improvements cost more. There's a book that addresses this issue called The Reinvention of Fire. One of the well-defended points in the book is that we should publicize the true costs of products. And one of the examples they used in the book was a gallon of gas. The true cost is not $4.10. It's many times more. It's not just the environmental cost. It's the cost of the Navy to keep the shipping channels open. It's the cost of the Army that fights and dies to secure adequate supplies of oil. The true cost of oil is enormous. Every president, from Richard Nixon included in every one of their State of the Union speeches, that it is in our national interest to end our addiction to foreign oil. You would think that modifying human behavior regarding something that is so important and so patriotic and so good for you would be a lot easier than picking up dog poop. You would think that after the OPEC oil embargo of 1972, the Iran hostage crisis, or the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, or certainly after 9/11, that we the people would do what needs to be done to stop making our enemies rich. But it didn't happen. You would think that after one of these attacks, Madison Avenue, Detroit, at all levels of government, would start a campaign to get us off of our fossil fuel addiction. However, post-9/11 TV commercials seem to be all for Toyota Tundras, Ford F-150s, and Escalades, not Priuses. My point is that national leadership to initiate and manage behavior modification to improve essential aspects of our environment should not be expected anytime soon. We will need to take a more bottoms-up approach. We need to take this action ourselves and stop hoping others will solve this problem for us. I didn't reach too far with that. Key West is uniquely and strategically positioned to make a difference. Each year, millions of tourists enjoy our island. If we made alternative fuels, and while we're at it, recycling, reuse, and reclamation, a fundamental part of our culture, people will be leaving here and saying, I had a great time at Key West. I was drunk all week. I went snorkeling and had great food. But you know what they're doing down there to help the environment? They fill in the blank. For me, looking 5 years ahead, they made sure that every municipal vehicle used biofuels, natural gas, or electricity. Not one of their vehicles uses gasoline. Recycling, reuse, and reclamation has become some sort of a religion for these people. Their goal is to totally eliminate the need for landfills. We should want to do these things because someday we will need to do these things. We need to become YIMBYs. Yes, in my backyard. And this is not just rhetorical babble. Key West can control its own destiny because we are the closest thing to a controllable market. Key West is a good place to run market tests. I went to college in Rochester, New York. Rochester was one of the best test market areas because it controlled its own market. All TV and radio was broadcast back then. So we were far enough away from Syracuse to the east and Buffalo to the west to not be influenced by their media. It seemed that Procter & Gamble's and McDonald's were always introducing test items that you couldn't find in any other part of the country. Key West is the closest thing to a closed market. Yes, we have cable TV. Yes, we're influenced by millions of visitors, but we are isolated enough to control our own future. This can only be accomplished if every elected official, appointed official, every member of an environmental group, and every member of the Chamber of Commerce buy into a set of goals and objectives. Our goal should not be to work toward 25% recycling of our solid waste. Our goal should be much, much higher. Our goal should not be to use alternative energies as some trendy social statement to impress our neighbors. It should be to have, we should have only non-fossil fuel cars allowed on this island. And we must use our culture as an incubator for visitors to see and learn and apply our success to their hometowns. If not us, who? Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. I'm going to talk, really want to kind of get to the Q&A, so I'm going to kind of cover a whole bunch of topics, hopefully within my,
You get too far allowed.
all right. Starting with kind of the first question, what are we doing to sort of protect and preserve our natural resources, our environment for both residents and visitors to kind of enhance that Key West experience? I'm going to kind of talk about it from sort of the government side and what we do at the Marine Sanctuary, but also sort of in partnership with a lot of the different agencies. The Eco Discovery Center you're here in tonight is one of those partnerships with national parks, national wildlife refuges, things like that. The sanctuary itself is by law in 1990, but after some fun public involvement. The regulations came along in 1997, and we've got regulations in place to go protect, we protect corals, we protect the seafloor, and we've got those regulations. We've got education programs in place to try and get folks more involved, more aware of the natural resources, trying to get them aware of what we should be protecting. And then even within the sanctuary, we've got our special zones, which have even higher levels of protection. And yet we're still seeing degradation on some of these levels. But we're also seeing great improvements. I mean, so it's a lot of this is good news and there's bad news. But our science and monitoring efforts has shown some of these protections are working. We're seeing higher and more fish, bigger fish in some of our reserves. Science and monitoring is also showing that we've got a lot more work to do. We've still got water quality issues to address, locally as well as regionally, and from far-flung sources, from places like Gulf of Mexico. All it affects the keys. All this work, though, it really takes community involvement. You can have, we've got 3 national parks surrounding the keys, 4 national wildlife refuges, and 6 state parks, 2 state aquatic preserves. All of this is surrounded by a national marine sanctuary, and there's regulations and programs in place for that. But I guess what I want to emphasize is it takes people and community involvement for the successes to happen, and for us to be able to address those challenges in the future. With the exception, talking about that Key West experience, with the exception of some of the islands and the refuge and places you can't go, pretty much everything's open to the public, and the ability for people to go out and enjoy that environment, to understand why it needs to be protected is important, but that's also one of the challenges. It's not the number of residents we have here, but we've got millions and millions of visitors that put that pressure on the environment that we've got. So, we really look to the community, to our volunteers, to nonprofit organizations, to the business community, to help us work towards that healthy environment. Talking about some of the steps we're taking, we've got programs in place, but like I said, there's more to do. Here at the sanctuary, we're undergoing a review of all of our regulations, of our marine zones, the ones that have worked really well. We want to kind of replicate that. And for the programs that maybe aren't working, how do we improve that? How do we engage more people? And how do we get more community input to marry up with the science to make sure that we are doing the right thing? And that's one of the challenges we're going through right now. This week in Marathon, we've got community working groups that we're working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, today, all addressing different topics, trying to provide that community input using the science to get the agencies the right recommendations from the community on how to protect the different resources. Chris Berg's did more of these meetings than I have. I think it's scary because Chris is everywhere. But Tuesday, there was a group, and they're working to address the shallow water wildlife and the habitats there, looking at some of the concentrated uses we're seeing that are damaging the shallow waters, the seagrasses, looking at maybe some of the areas where there are incompatible uses, ways to prevent further groundings. We've got hundreds and hundreds of groundings every year that are tearing up the seagrass. How do we do more for boater education? People that come down here maybe aren't used to boating in 2-3 feet of water. Wednesday, we have a working group, again, community input, looking at the science, ways to improve coral reef restoration. And not just kind of outplanting corals, but really intensive reef ecosystem restoration, and coming up with ways that we can improve those methods. Today, there was another working group working on the larger ecosystem protection measures, and how do we bring back historical spawning aggregations? How do we make sure that there is going to be a viable commercial and recreational fishery in 20 years. But again, it's the science and the community coming together to make those recommendations. You know, and I look forward to what's going to be coming out of that process. That's going on right now, and I encourage folks to be involved. And all this, it takes public-private partnerships, community involvement, and the business community. One of our best efforts is the Blue Star program, where we certify dive and snorkel operators, and they incorporate their education messages into their day-to-day businesses. And the science is proven, you know, just a 5 to 10 minute talk on the importance of the environment as they're going out to the reef to go snorkeling has reduced touching, breaking, standing on coral by 30 to 35%. Just that quick message and that appreciation, getting it out. So, you know, there's ways we can do this. Looking 5 years ahead, what are the challenges we're going to be looking at? You know, we're still going to have to address issues like marine debris. Water quality will still be an issue. We'll still be looking at overfishing. We constantly have to address poaching issues, coastal development in the face of sea level rise, and more people on the water, and who knows what the invasive species will be. I think in 5 years we're going to see more intensive use of the backcountry. I think more commercial uses are going to be back there. It's something we need to work with the business community to address and make sure we're getting that Key West experience right, because that's what people want, that island experience. We need to make sure it's done right. This is the sport fishing capital of the world, and this morning I was talking to one of the marine biologists in this working group, and he was talking about in Biscayne how up in Biscayne he's been analyzing data collected over 30 years, and after analyzing all the science, they figured out with the gradient that you would need to spend 450 hours underwater to actually see one black grouper that was of legal size to catch, and that's pretty frightening for up in Biscayne. And you know, it's not that bad here, but that's what we need to address. So we have opportunities to change it. Our Tortugas Reserve, the farthest away from Biscayne, in 2000, before the reserve was put in, we found 4 or 5 fish that were spawning, and 10 years later, after those protections were put in, you can't even count them. There's 4,000 to 5,000 fish spawning in the reserve. So there's ways that we can move forward. So, and there's a challenge that, as we continue to see impacts in the coral reef ecosystem from pressure, human pressure, but also warming waters, bleaching, disease. But the opportunity is we're making huge advances in coral reef restoration. And again, that's through public-private partnerships. That's the only way it's going to work. And I think that's going to be the future for saving the coral reef, is everyone working together. And, the advancements in science, but it's going to take community involvement and partnerships across the board, with government, nonprofits, and business community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.